the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin, we have several people in the via Zoom.
Sure.
We have our village planner, Rich Warren. We have our village engineers, Matt Janglica and Kevin Peterman. And we have several other, Stephen Greenfield, Martin Hoffman, Melissa Rivas, and John Tarbett from Tarbett and Lester.
Okay. Are they all in?
They're all in. And then maybe one more. Who is BTV? I don't know who that is.
Okay. The first item is old business, a lot line modification for Gretchen Topping and Corner House at Sagaponic LLC. We're still missing something, so I need a motion to adjourn this to the January meeting.
So
Motion, okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Site plan application, 543 Spud LLC. They have some boulders which have been once on the beachfront, which have been stored on the neighboring lot, and now they want to pick them up and move them. And in the process, a lot of the vegetation that's grown up over the many years is going to be disturbed. So we have reports from our consultants on that. Who wants to go first?
Bill, you also have the representative from the applicant, Melissa Devovich. I don't
Okay.
know if you want her to present the application.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I was wondering also, Melissa Devovich, the Chronic Environmental, I'm here on behalf of 543 Spud LLC. I also am joined by remotely by Melissa Rivas from Ed Hollander Land Design.
She's in there.
Yeah, it would be possible for her to share the screen. We were going to present on the screen.
Sure.
Yes. You
I just need to be able to share. It says it's
should be able to
disabled.
I'm not, let me know if you can.
Not yet.
Is it telling you that I'm not allowing you to do that?
That's right. It's saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
You want to go, Melissa, while I'm working on this, or?
You kind of made her stuff.
I just updated all this, so of course.
What was it any different than what we have in paper?
We can review it on paper. I just wanted to flip through. I thought this would be relatively quick. It's a 1.9 acre property. It's currently vacant. We have lots of pictures to show you, but it was, it's parcel 3 of a minor subdivision, Shepherd and Carlo, that was approved in 1976. Back before that, it was farmland. After that, in 1978-79, there was a house, single-family residence that was built on the structure, on the property. In 81 and 95, there were a swimming pool, a gazebo, and various items built. It was a developed single-family lot, completely clear. The last updated gazebo was 1995, so it's been residential use for over 20 years. Then, of course, in the 90s, I don't know if you recall, I've been here long enough. We had a bunch of nor'easters that threatened Potato Lane.
Melissa, can you share now? I think I just turned it on.
All right, let me check. Yes. All right, there we go.
You want to start with the very first? Let's start with the first one.
You want to start over?
Why not? I'll be really quick.
Okay.
1976 farmland. Next. Then we go into 84. You can see some of the residences. Like I said, and then this is now in 2001. In the mid 90s, you may recall, if you've been, I'm sure everybody here's been here long enough. There was a time where we had a bunch of heavy erosion along Potato Lane. In fact, number 1 potato fell into the ocean, which I've never seen in my entire life. We ended up getting, when I worked for some of the properties on the other side, on the Ashford side, got some emergency permits to put armor toe stone. At the end of this, when the emergency was done, we were told to remove it off the beach. Many of the clients had hired Jim Grimes, who said, sure, you can pay me to put the stone there. Then he said, now you can pay me to get it back. And some of the clients didn't want to do this. And this particular one, the previous property was one of them. And they had the stone transferred from their oceanfront lot onto this lot. And you can clearly see on both sides the armor toe. Then over the years, it was left to overgrow. This is 14, and now this is present 2022. There are no specimen trees or anything of note there. In fact, it's a lot of Russian olive and overgrown brambles. If you want to go to the next one.
And animals living.
And then we have here, this is a survey showing exactly where the stone is that's going to be removed. We've actually spoke to Bob Terry of Terry Contracting, and he's actually willing to come pick it up and reuse it. So that's why we're trying to do this in the middle of winter where it's not muddy and everything. We pick it up and relocate it. Can we go to the next?
All right, let me go to the first photo.
Here's some of the photos. We got 10 ticks. I'm gonna put this picture. And if we could go to the plan.
It's just 2 4-ton boulders.
Oh, no.
Oh,
2 boulders, they're very big. And here's a plan I have, if Melissa, you can go over this or proposal list.
yeah. So as Melissa said, we're working with Bob Terry from Terry Contracting, and we worked with him to develop this plan to show exactly how much space he'll need to get his equipment in to load up the boulders onto a 40-yard tractor trailer truck and bring them to his yard. So this is the area that we've isolated. Around the work zone, we have an eco barrier to limit erosion. Once all the work is completed and all the boulders have been removed, the dashed area shows the places where we're going to be reseeding with the native fescue mix. So after all of that work is done, we'll leave the eco barrier up until all of the seed mix takes, and then we'll close out the project.
And I would like to ask, when I was speaking to Rhodey and to John Winston during this, we started talking about this in the spring. Originally, we were directed that, you should only ask for where you want to move, where you're removing the boulders from. And there was a question because in section 245-65B of the town code, it doesn't really differentiate between grading and clearing and things like that. So we've limited our work under, because most of the work in this area will involve soil disturbance. And we didn't want to have to get a SWIP yet until we come back to go for single family residence, which we are working with Leroy Street Studios on a plan right now for that. But, and we'd be willing to, if the board would be so amenable to it, we would love to, when we do this removal, actually just cut to maybe a height of 2 feet the area in the middle, just so we can do our line sites and everything for in anticipation of doing the house in the future. It's up to the board. We talked about asking for an interpretation. The board be amenable to it. Normally you're not without having a house plan in front of you, but we are in process. And that's pretty much where we are right now.
Who did you say the removal company was? Terry?
Terry Contracting.
Where are they located?
They're located in Southampton and Riverhead.
So they're going to be exiting Sagaponic on the west side.
Well, the reason you can also see, we're trying to do all the staging on site so we don't destroy the private road. They just put public water down there. So we're trying to keep all of our activities on site.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of new roads, just to go along with what Carrie said, as well as the big project we did on the bridge several years back.
I don't think they'll be going over the bridge.
I don't think they can go
And
over that.
I don't think,
I almost think, you guys can work with John Woodswood as to the quickest route out. Once that time
Quickest route
happens.
would probably be just coming out here, hanging out. Well, most direct would probably be hanging out right and going downtown line and
Town
getting
line,
right out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
town line hasn't been paved yet.
Sacrificial.
How far from
Anyway, don't I?
Taylor Road, you're not gonna take the vegetation that goes along?
No, leave the hedgerow. We would leave the hedgerow.
Leave that.
Yes, leave the hedgerow.
That's a very thick, and, well-grown area there.
Actually, it isn't. I've walked through that whole area.
Well, I mean, as far as the the ocean coming up in the event of a hurricane or a disaster.
Mhm.
We gotta keep vegetation
Well,
as
you
much as
have,
we can.
you have a complete house and double dune in front of us. To the
Yeah, that's nice unless you're the homeowner and you have a heavy sea. But you're talking about taking these boulders out and it's in the middle of the property.
No, the boulders on either side of the property.
Where the yellow
The
is.
boulders are here. So the ocean's over here, then you have the dunes, a house, then you have the boulders, and then right up to Dennis.
So you're not going into anywhere near Potato Road.
No, this is Potato over here, and we don't even, this property doesn't even have access to Potato.
No, I know
We
that.
have no
That's my
access.
point.
So no, everything's gonna
Mhm.
be going that way.
That's my point.
We're not going
Stay out of
to, we're
Potato
not
Road.
going to Potato, it's
And
private.
the
road.
other point is that road that you're going out has just been paved,
They just, put-
repaved.
I actually had 2 clients on that road, we are aware of that.
And you're
That's-
okay with that? Because that's gonna,
Because, well, that's why, if you go back, can you go back to the work plan, please? Melissa?
Yep.
That's why we're doing all the staging, stockpiling on the property, not on the road. And then they're gonna be loaded up here and go right out.
and the people that live along that private road are aware of it. They're okay with it.
Well, they've been, I haven't spoken to anybody except the Wilks, who are my clients, but I don't think anybody has a problem with it. I haven't heard of anything.
Yeah, well, they might not know.
Well, I think, actually, we're probably, that's when we want to do this also in the middle of winter, when our ground is frozen, it's easier to get out. The road will be stronger. We're hoping to get this done in a couple days and get out.
I'm pretty sure, by the way, just looking at bus routes,
Mhm.
you have 2 kids on that road that get a bus there every day.
Okay.
You probably aren't there at, you know.
No, but
7:30.
I've actually been there a lot because the house under construction is further on this road that we were, our clients of mine, so I've been going back and forth there for 3 years now.
The planner and the engineer. Report on this.
Okay, can we get, who do we go first? Planner? Rich Warren, do you want to comment on this, please?
Sure. Rich Warren, planner for the Village of Sagaponic. In general, I don't have a problem with the application. I think the thing is just making sure that the details of what's happening are all appropriate. I've put together a couple page email to the village, starting on page 2, which is really where the questions result. Is that, as you can see in the bottom left-hand side of the property where they're proposing the stabilized construction entrance that's going to go out under the 30-foot wide private road. A question I have is that since this is going to involve some heavy equipment, and my guess is that this is going to take more than a couple of days. I mean, if you're talking about 4-ton rock, you're not going to get many rocks on a truck itself. So this is going to be an effort to get this stuff out. Is there any obligation on the part of the village in terms of ensuring that the 30-foot wide private road doesn't become disturbed, broken up with the heavy equipment that's coming in and out of there? It's a question with the village attorney and the village engineer, and whether or not there should be some sort of maintenance requirement for the private road. I don't know whether or not that's something the village should get into because it is a private road, but we are talking about an action that the board's going to approve that has an impact on a road that there are, I think there's 7 houses on there that actually take access off that road. So that's one question that I have for the village engineer and also the village attorney. The second is that the plans have a notation that the area that's going to be disturbed, which is shown in the crosshatched area in the plan, is going to be planted with a native fescue mix, but there's no other detail. I don't know, is this going to be something that'll be issued some sort of building permit where there's a performance requirement to make sure that in fact this is planted in a particular time? I think that we have to be sure that since there is going to be this kind of site disturbance, that it is going to be planted within a time period close to the completion of the work that's been done. I recommend that the boundaries of the property be staked by a surveyor prior to the activities so that there can be some project limiting fencing and sediment control barriers put around the perimeter of not only the property boundary lines, but the limit of clearing that they're showing here. because there wouldn't be any authorization to go off-site to remove material. We can't go on to neighboring properties with this. So I think that there actually should be survey work done. The stabilized entrance, there is no specification for that. I leave that for the village engineer to decide whether or not there should be some specification for that and how that should be shown. The clearing limit that's shown on this plan, I've roughly calculated, and it's just a hair below 43,560 square feet. And I would suggest that we get this put on a survey. So this way if you go over 43,560 square feet, you're required to do a SWIP, Stormwater Pollution Protection Plan. And that's one of the reasons why there should be project limiting control fencing on the property. So this way we know that we're not going to wind up exceeding the limit that gets, people in trouble for not having done what they need to do. So it should probably be on a survey, marked on the survey. This way the surveyor who's going to go out and put the stakes in to show the limits of the clearing. So to me, it's really about the details of this. It's not, I have no opposition to removing the rocks that are on the property. That's just something that makes some sense. But it's really about making sure the details are. So the questions are, again, the road, the private road, details about the planting, making sure that there's some sort of time frame to ensure that that's going to take place. Stake out the clearing, stabilized entrance details, and then getting it shown on a survey, in terms of the clearing limits. So.
Okay, thank you. Matthew?
Okay, yep. So Matt Jedlicka, consulting engineer for the village. So we have no issues with the plan either. It sounds like, as far as the planting, this is a temporary thing. If the plan is to come back with a site plan for a residence. So as far as the planting, we have no comments about that. The stabilized construction entrance or tracking pad, it probably would be a good idea to see some details about that, because you could say proposed stabilized tracking pad and throw a few stones down, or you could actually put in a, tracking pad that would be required by one of the SWIP projects. So I think that it would be a good idea to have that detail. Tracking pad should have filter fabric, 2-inch stone or RCA. It should be probably 50 feet long instead of 30 and 12 feet wide, because there's going to be a lot of trucks going in and out. And it's going to be a lot of dirt tracking out of the site. So it'd be nice to kind of trap some of it on that tracking pad first. As far as the private road, I really don't know, what to say. It's a private road. The village is not really here to control what happens on a private road. But that being said, hopefully all the trucks going back and forth, Bob Terry doesn't wind up damaging the road with all the vehicle traffic that's going to be coming in and out. Other than that, there's on this particular plan, there's really no, grading changes or anything like that. It's just the removal of the rocks and whatever's required to access those rocks.
Okay, great.
Who are the owners of the private road? The four.
Yes. The one thing I will say is that we are going to bring equipment. The reason we use Bob Terry and Terry Contracting is they do a lot of projects. They do rock climbers. They do a lot of they're used to being in tight, smaller spots. So he will bring the appropriate equipment. He's not going to go and smash the whole. He's going to be that's why we picked him too. He has the equipment to pick it up, pick each of the stones up, put them in, and take them out in whatever vehicle is necessary. That's why we're stockpiling too. We may even use a smaller trailer than that, I'm not sure. But I do know that that's why we use him. His company is the one that rebuilt Flying Point Road bulkhead in Millville, Northeast, and they were able to get around and everything and not damage anybody's houses or the utility septic system. So we're very thoughtful about that. With regard to, also just to note too, is that we're going to be coming back to build a house. they're gonna need heavy equipment to do that. So it is gonna be a continuing, something in the future we'll be coming back for. I did have a question about the survey of the problem. We actually are already proposing to put project limiting fence and echo barrier around. I know there's a question that was brought up about, well, how do we know it's signed off on? Perhaps if the board is amenable to us doing the additional clearing, like I said, in the middle section, what we do is after the rocks are done, you can write it in the condition, after the rocks are done, we do the reseeding. Mr. Woodsley can come out and make an inspection. He can also inspect the project limiting fence and the echo barrier prior to our commencement of work. We can have the inspectors go out, stake it out, not a problem. And then once he feels that we've done the rock, we've seeded it correctly and everything, then perhaps part two, if the board would write in condition, we could clear the center part of the property. We could only involve.
Yeah, I think, we'll stay away from that for now, because that
Okay.
opens up some other issues, so,
Okay, all right.
one step at a time.
And then with regards to the tracking pad, Kevin, yes?
Matt,
Matt, okay. Matt, could you give us, you were just suggesting 50-foot long, 12-foot wide, 2-foot deep. Could you provide that to us in an email or something so we can make sure we address what you asked for?
sure. It's,
Thank
you know, it's,
Yeah, that's your plan. If you just want to sketch it in or something, we'll just amend our plan accordingly.
okay, just the state standard, SWIP required tracking pad, but I'll get you a detail.
I'd appreciate it. We haven't hired a subcontractor yet and everything. We're working with Ed Hollander's office, so that would be really helpful. Thank you. And
So you'd be amenable to the specs that he's providing?
Mhm.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. And I think everything else taking the survey, stabilize construction entrance. I think that's it. Something else?
Any other questions from the board?
As far as the a bond for the road, is that something on a private road that we
No,
don't
we
require?
don't do that. Unless there's any other members of the public to be heard on the application, I'll go through the resolution.
Anybody else here to speak to the issue? Okay, anybody else on the board? Now, we have a resolution, this paperwork looked good, so we have a resolution prepared. Do we need to add on the additional tracking pad size or?
Nope, I'm gonna go through some of the points that are in the draft resolution on it. So, I want to thank Mr. Warren and Mr. Jedlicka's work on this application and assistance. Anticipating some of the concerns you heard, a little powwow I had with Trustee Barber on the resolution. If you look at it, we do talk about the installation in 2A. There are certain conditions that the Hollander design plan is what they'll follow. Dated November 9, 2022. We do request that you install the project limiting erosion control fencing. And that it does get staked by a surveyor and then inspected by the village building inspector as to the stockpile areas and the surrounding properties. We do request to stabilize construction entrance off of the road. That'll be subject to inspection by the village engineer. The village engineer is going to provide the specs for that. He'll inspect it on your installation to make sure that it fits his specs. We do note that the property to stay under SWIP will have to stay under the 43,560 square feet. You'll reseed with native fescue mix as set forth in the Hollander plan. To Trustee Barber's point, and also as raised by Mr. Warren, there is a condition that the applicant will restore any damage to the private road to the condition that exists prior to any action under this resolution. We don't normally take action on private roads, but because you're asking for village permission to access a private road, we have to look out for the other citizens that are there as well. It's not a village road we don't have authority under normally, but because they're asking village permission on a project that will inevitably impact the road, Mr. Warren raised that objection or concern today. We thought that was good. Trustee Barber raised it, as a matter of fact, just before as well. So that is actually, if the board reads it, is condition 3 in the resolution of approval. And at the end, when it, upon your plantings and final topography grades and clearing limits, you'll have that all inspected by the building inspector on submission of the as-built survey for the village to get your certificate of compliance.
Anything else? So I'll make a motion to
Approve the resolution.
approve the resolution as it's printed and with the
And deemed read.
being read into the record. Okay, do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Merry
much.
Christmas,
Thank you,
everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Next up is the subdivision application of 351 Bridge Lane LLC. Do we have someone here to present or on Zoom? Okay.
Mr.
Hi, John Tarbit. Can you hear me?
Yes, John.
Okay, great. Hi, so I'm John Tarbit. I represent the applicant, and we are requesting we submitted for approval to subdivide a 33-acre lot into two properties, two parcels. Currently, it is one property. It's a standard subdivision. There's no variances needed, and I believe we complied with all the requirements in the village code to subdivide. So we haven't had any feedback from the village yet, so I'm sure we'll have some today, and we're here to listen.
Rich Warren, do you want to start off?
Sure. I've taken a look at the plan that was submitted to the village that's entitled a yield map for 351 Bridge Lane LLC. On the top, prepared by Saska Surveying. And I would say that the map doesn't qualify under the planning board's requirements as a yield map. It's not quite clear to me exactly what's being proposed on the plan. I see that you have a lot, there's a north lot and a south lot, and then there is something on the side that says proposed access easement, and you have solid property boundary lines that go around all three. And I don't know whether the access easement is meant to be part of lot one or part of lot two. So there probably needs to be some clarity in terms of what's happening with property boundary lines there. The yield requirements in the village code, when you do a standard yield subdivision, you're required to provide open space. It's 5 acres per 100 lots. It's some minuscule amount, but if we are talking about a yield plan, if we're doing a subdivision, we have to do a yield plan and then whatever the proposed plan would be. So I would suggest that the applicant and their survey go back and take a look at the requirements under section 190-11B of the village code and confirm that they have met all those requirements. They're under the required data for submission. There's a requirement for topography. The plan doesn't show topography. The board should decide if they want to waive that or if they want to require that. The map that's certified to 531 Bridge Lane doesn't list the owner and subdivider. I'm assuming it's 531 Bridge Lane, but I don't want to assume anything because that's not my job to assume. It's supposed to show that. The plan doesn't reference utilities. That's required. It's one of the submission requirements. The map doesn't identify any reference to methods of drainage, sewage, or water supply. It also doesn't include the zoning district on the map. So I think that if they went through the submission requirements for this, it would be helpful. This way we know that we've got a map that that is compliant with the village code. The plan shows a tennis court that's located on the northern lot that is located outside of the proposed building envelope within the setback to the proposed property line. And there should be some reference to whether or not that is to remain or that is to be removed. Otherwise, it would be in a non-compliant location for the setback from the proposed property line. But to me, most importantly, is the question is what's happening relative to the access easement that's shown as a discrete parcel. Is that meant to be like a private road, or is that meant to be part of one of the lots? If you could just scroll down on the map a little bit, Rhodey, to show the other way. Sorry, scroll up, I guess. So you can see that there's a crosshatched area that's labeled as an access easement, but it has solid red lines around it. So I don't know which property that's meant to be attached to, or if that is a separate property in and of itself. If it's a separate property, then the southern lot would require a variance in terms of road frontage because it does not have frontage on a public road. So So the map needs a little bit further clarity, so we actually understand what's being proposed. The map also, there should be some consideration to evaluation about how this plan complies with the open space requirements of section 245.12 of the village code. I know part of this property is located within a reserved area, which, as I understand it from the last application that was here before the village for some deer fencing, deer exclusion fencing, I think that this is underneath an easement from Peconic Land Trust. But there is a requirement that there's open space to be shown, so we should discuss, how they meet the open space requirement of section 245.12 of the village code. The Board of Trustees have to make a determination whether or not the reserved area and conservation area that is shown along the southern part of the property, which would be parts of the lots themselves, they're not dedicated reserved areas. They are easements over top of lots that are proposed, whether or not that will qualify to meet the 65% open space requirement. So I think the memo that I provided, I think has some good direction for the applicant in terms of coming back to the board with some additional clarity on the map. And I think at that point we can actually look at it and see how it complies with the subdivision requirements. But lot area requirements for these lots, you're required under the code to exclude those portions of lots that are restricted from development. So I would want to see the calculations for the properties, since they do have easements on them. What's the lot areas of the properties that remain to demonstrate that they're compliant with the requirements under the village zoning. So I think I've got about a 6-page memo here that I think would be helpful for the applicant to receive a copy of. And I think once they make some adjustments to the map, we can talk further.
So just to be clear, this was a preliminary filing. Yeah, so that's why that's why some of this stuff was not on there.
That's
okay.
fine. That's fine. I know it was a pre-submission, but it's labeled as a yield map in terms of the title block for the map. So we just need to clarify exactly kind of what we're looking at.
Yep, understood. And you'll share your memo with us, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll come from Rhodey.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Does anyone have other questions for
Run
Rich?
through the engineer's report.
Oh, before Rich, questions of Rich?
No.
Okay, Matthew, I guess you're up.
Okay, so Mr. Warren is very thorough. We really honestly don't have anything to add to that. Everything that's in his memo, we kind of, our memo has essentially the same stuff, the utilities, it doesn't show any sort of drainage or sewage or, water supply or any of that stuff. So nothing else to add to Mr. Warren's report.
Would you guys provide some direction as far as what you expect? Like, should the next submission not be preliminary? Or
I would suggest you come back with a revised preliminary map. John, do you know what the expectation is relative to this access easement? Because
I believe it's going to serve
discrete parcel on this.
Yeah, no, I think it's just, I think Dave maybe confused it with his lines, but it's meant to serve, I'm gonna say, which lot is that? Lot 2? I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the southerly lot.
Southerly lot. So that's meant to be part of lot 2?
It is. I believe that's the case.
Okay, so if you can make sure that the property boundary lines are clear and distinct,
Yeah.
showing where they begin and end. And if it's just an access easement over top of that property to provide access to the northern lot, the building envelope of the northern lot, it should be clear that people understand that. Because right now it looks like there's 3 lots.
No, I didn't notice that until you pointed it out, but yeah, I see it now for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the tennis court would be removed. I think you brought up questions for the board about whether they would want to see topography. That was another question too.
It's typically required for subdivision maps.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we do it again, if we do that prior to resubmitting or
I can take this offline if they want to talk about
You want me-
What?
I'm sorry, what?
it. These guys can take this offline if they want to talk about it now.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, Rich, I'm happy to talk offline.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Thank you very much, Rich and Matthew.
Thank
It's
you.
great.
And John, I will supply you with both the reports from the engineer and the planner.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, and John, if you have questions, give me a call and we're happy to go through it with you.
Okay, thank you.
What kind of date should we adjourn this to? Or
Well, I'll leave that up to Mr. Tarbett, how long he thinks to get this back together on the environmental consultants and the engineers' feedback. A month, 2 months?
If we could, I think it's probably unrealistic, but if we can leave it on for next month, and I'll just get hold, I'll contact Rhodey and pull it if we're not gonna make it.
It's January 11th. January 11th.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to adjourn this application to January 11th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, agricultural fence application, Golf Lot LLC and Jeffrey White. We have someone here.
Excuse me, Bill. Matt and Rich, do you
Yes.
need anything further?
I don't think so.
Do you want to excuse them from the meeting?
Sure.
So Matt and Rich, you're free to go. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Okay, thanks.
Very much.
All
Happy
right,
holidays.
Holidays, if we
everybody.
don't see you.
you too.
Thank
So
you.
long.
Happy holidays.
So long.
Hey everyone, Alex Balsam, I'm a farmer there, on the property here with Pete Ludlow, who also farms at the property as well. We're very excited for the prospect of this fence. Speaking from my own operation, you know, we're lucky enough to have such a demand for our produce that we're having a hard time filling it, and turning this into truly productive farmland is gonna go a long way to helping us. Of note, we've taken the fence 50 feet, call it east of the current tillable area on the side closest to Sag Pond, just to give a little more buffer there. On the one of building lot and to the bottom right, the southeast, we're not gonna have we haven't proposed a traditional deer fence along that neighbor's westerly and northerly lines. They have a mix of lower fencing and very thick plantings that we're thinking is going to do the trick to provide a buffer for us there. If we're proven wrong there, we'll come back and put in the traditional fencing there, but you know, something like this, given the cost and whatnot, if we don't think we need it, we're not gonna, we'll forego it for now. Other than that, we've set the 2 gates back off the roadway. I think it's 30 feet, so we can pull our equipment in, open the gates or close the gates without impacting the traffic on the road. It'll be traditional deer fence, but we'll use a black powder coated mesh like our farms on some of our other fences. And I guess, you know, I don't know if it's necessary without any real opposition that I know of at this time to go through the criteria that are otherwise set forth on our application. So I'll spare everyone that speech and field questions, I guess, at this time.
Yeah, I think you should probably go through all the steps.
All right,
Sure.
I'll do that. All right, so the requirements in the code asks first if the property is using an active agricultural production, which it is. We've demonstrated not only in this application, but other applications in the past, the economic impacts that the deer cause to our operation. As I said in that application, you know, in our case, as vegetable farmers, we're looking at 100% loss for most of the crops that we would like to do there.
Okay, just to make it clear, you haven't really been doing vegetable production there because you couldn't, your experiences in other fields that you can't get a profitable yield out of.
Correct, and
Yeah.
profitable yield is an understatement.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we have tried it. We have, you know, we're a newer farm in some regards. We've been doing this 20 years. And so we've gone through all the motions, you know, we've used our irrational exuberance to plant crops where they shouldn't have been planted. We didn't have protection from the deer, and we have lost, you know, in some cases up to 100% of the crop.
Right.
What's the farming plan on the mix on the acreage?
Yeah, so Boston Farms has been farming for the last couple of years, 20 acres. Cox Bay has been farming 10 acres. So you're gonna see on our acreage, you're gonna see a mix of vegetable crops, sweet corn, pumpkins, squash. You know, really the sky's the limit for what we could put there. Our farm grows everything you're gonna see in your, you know, home garden vegetable catalog, and then some. So, you know, it could be anything and everything. But to be honest with you, that'd be our immediate plan would be the rotating those crops and at that field.
And what's the Mecox Bay component?
It's gonna be corn as well, but not sweet corn like we grow, corn to feed the herd. Small grains, feed anything else to add there. And we've tried, even our own farm, we tried small grains there 2 years ago, and even a small grain, to be clear, is not a huge economic part of our operation. We're more into the high value crops, but even then, when we're trying to make a good faith attempt to use this land for something productive, doing the grains, we got handed a new one. And I mean, we sold very quickly. You know, it's nothing but economic losses there.
Just fed the deer for the year.
Yeah, even on lower value crops, you know, so.
So herd feed on the 10 acres or so, the other crops on the other 21 or so acres.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, in terms of alternatives to the fencing, I mean, certainly deer herd control efforts have been going on. I'm not a hunter myself, so I support the endeavor, but it's not for me. But obviously there's hunting going on in the area, and I believe calling whatever measures are being taken to control the herd might do something, but certainly it's not enough. As I spoke about raising less susceptible crops like our grain, where you're not going to experience 100% loss, but you're certainly going to experience enough of a loss that you're going to lose money trying to grow the crop. In terms of alternative heights and styles of fencing itself, the other styles of, I've been speaking from experience, we've tried it all. We've done smaller fences, we've done electric fences. This is what works. This is what works. I brought this up a little bit in the written application, but you know, alternatives like the 4 foot with the 90-degree 4 foot, it might work. I'd argue that it doesn't look as good. The maintenance issues are pretty extreme on that, very reliant on herbicides, which is something we try to minimize. And many of our crops we frankly don't use at all. What else? So yeah, that addresses the fences, and that's really it for the criteria in the village code. Preserving and protecting the scenic resources of the village. So again, we're using that black powder coated fencing, which blends in very well. We're not using an opaque fencing. We're not using solid fencing. We're using something that essentially all light can come through. It's certainly the most, I think, least intrusive to the vista option to control the deer.
Do you take care of weeds?
Yes, yeah, we do. Oftentimes mechanically, we do it like instead of relying on herbicides. Just to give a little more background there. So our operation, most of our crops, we actually grow with organic methods, not all of them. On those fields where we're not farming with organic inputs, we will use some herbicide on the bottom of the fence, usually just once a year. And then our other fences, we control mechanically with, I mean, we're out there trimming the weeds and pulling the lines and making sure that that's not an issue. And obviously we'll continue to do that here.
Being that the proximity of the property close to said pond, did you secure the necessary DC permit?
I did. I have a DC permit, and I also have the wetlands permit from the town of Southampton.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were submitted as part of the record for the board.
So I just have a question too. So is there
you said there's a buffer zone there, because obviously they're not gonna be able to kill all the deer, and the deer are gonna be, totally support the farming and our farming community, but there are deer, and they're, all of a sudden, they won't be able to have access. So I was thinking about what kind of corridor there is for the deer to be able to move around and not all be other places in the road and in our yards. Is there any sort of solution for that, or is that buffer on the pond side, or? how
Well,
do
we
you-
do have, that fairly substantial buffer there on the pond side. We don't have any other, there's no, we're not on the east side of the field. We haven't come off of the property lines in terms of leaving, like a 20-foot pathway for them to get to the back. If the board insists on that, I don't think it's a non-starter for us, but,
Well,
obviously.
it looks like you're gonna be using their fencing anyway, so it doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's just the deer, it's something we all have to live with and think about the way they move and all work together.
Yeah, agreed.
Other questions from the board?
I think about the aesthetics, just not of the fence, because the fence is what it is, but I didn't focus on where the gates are, but so many times when it's wet, like there's an area on Bridge Lane that is just always got huge truck tracks and puddles. It's very unsightly. Is there a way to deal with that? It looks like there's going to be 2 areas there now. Is there something that it can be managed somehow? I mean, just.
Absolutely. I mean, I think again, Peter farms that section of fields a lot over the time in, and he knows the lay of that land better than I do on that side of the field. But being that that gate is quite a few feet coming off of the edge of the pond. We're probably out of the worst of the mud there. Now, if we're not, the short answer to your question is, yeah, absolutely, we can do things. I mean, I don't know if adding some sort of gravel or, crushed stone on the apron there leading up to the gate is acceptable to the board, but I mean, yeah, but if we're having problems with, mud, pulling out mud into the road, or we can certainly address that.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Anyone from the public here to address this?
I would like to say something if I could. I don't know if.
Yes, just introduce yourself for the record.
Oh, hi. My name is Stephen Greenfield. I live at 441 Ridge Lane, which right opposite the proposed fence. And if I can tell from the drawing, it looks like one of the gates is right opposite my driveway. I'm not sure, whether I have any basis for an objection other than I have a problem with the aesthetics. I know there are fences being put in all over the area. Open spaces are being closed off. I understand the situation the farmers are having. I know I do see the deer there, in the evenings. I see, a handful of deer. But I've seen crops over the last 8 years that I've been there, so I'm not quite sure what the actual loss factor is. So my objection would be on aesthetic grounds, closing off the property, forcing the deer back onto the homeowners' properties in the area. The culling efforts in the last 2 years have had quite a bit of success. Very few deer have been there in this past summer. I spent the entire summer out there for the first time. I was watching every day. So that's really what my objection is. I don't know if there's a basis for it, other than I would like the areas to be more open. I'm not sure how the fence itself would actually operate, whether they talked about putting in rocks now in case it gets muddy. I would hate to have it look like a construction site at that entrance. So that's where my objection is. I know some of my neighbors have told me they've agreed, everyone's unhappy about it. I understand progress, but so I'm objecting on those grounds, and I hope that some other solution could be found. So, thank you.
Let me point out to you that with the fence, they're precluded from putting plantings or anything that obstructs the view other than the open fencing. It's be the same kind of fencing that's on Sag Main Street, the Foster Farm put up, or on many other fields. If you look at Daniels Lane, where there is no fence application, the party has blocked off the view entirely with trees or hedging. And so in one sense, this preserves view more, even though it does provide some obstruction. At least you can see through it. And without fence, they have the right to put up a solid hedge. So, I mean, that's one of the benefits of it, having a fence.
Yeah, I understand that. I know what you're referring to in Daniels where the trees were put up. Again, I would hope to have it left open. I don't know what recourse there is other than I want to come on and voice my objection for those reasons. So,
Well, thank you. It's nice to have somebody show up.
I wish I could have been there in person.
Anyone else speak to the issue?
I don't know if this is maybe this is for another time, but since we're talking about the lot across, I'm just personally as someone who lives across the street, there used to be a snow fence across the street. We have in the winter when it snows, it all comes to our property from the field. And then when the snow plows go by, we get snowed in. And then when we, shovel the driveway, the snow plows come by again, and we get, it's really difficult. So I don't know if that is something that is an issue that could be spoken about, but.
That's been happening forever.
It's funny,
Parsonage Lane too.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the nematodes.
And Montauk Highway.
And Montauk Highway being in the fencing, and then when they took the fencing up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, I've been around it, and I thought that by re-putting the fencing back down into Montauk Highway, they would roll it up at the end of the snow season, take it somewhere, and it would come back. The nematode was being spread to all the farm properties by the fencing, and so they stopped doing it.
Interesting, okay.
I mean, obviously I think you could earmark fencing. I too have noticed, it's funny, that's an issue. My parents voiced the same concern, so I grew up in Amagansett, across from Land Network, farmed by the Fosters, really, that's one of the reasons why I'm here. And growing up, I remember the town coming and putting the deer fencing up, right? And they live right across the street, and the same story, the drift from the north, coming from the field on to the north. I mean, you can't even get close to getting out, even in moderate snow, right? So one thing you can actually, and the village just did this on another fence that we farmed in East Hampton Village. They put the deer fencing, they attached the winter deer fencing to the face of our fence, which is fine with us. It might help that issue.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Just a thought, since you're here, your fences over on Mecox Road have all these invasive species growing up on them. They're not well maintained, and from my distance, 4 or 5 miles away, I've heard complaints about them. And this fence cannot be maintained that way. Just so you know, since you're in the field, it puts a bad face on agriculture. And also cover cropping, the west end of that field, maybe it's a water problem, but it doesn't have a great cover crop on it. And
Should I respond?
sure, go ahead.
The west end of the area, there is a low spot there that's been there as long as I've been there, but we've been improving it since we got in there, subsoiling and doing whatever we can, and it has shrunk quite a bit, which I think at this point you can see, satellite imagery. As far as the invasive species and the stuff growing up around it, I think we won't have a problem keeping that out. Different situation in the cow field at home.
Yep. All right.
Mr. Mayor, can I add just a couple items to the resolution as proposed? The resolution as proposed before the board has 2 conditions. We would add 4 more conditions today. One being a reminder of no obstructions or plantings around the fencing to interfere with the view shed in accordance with the village code. 3, the property must remain in active farming. for the installation of a stabilized stone blend base to minimize mud from the property upon approval from the village, if with the inspection of the village building inspector. And again, with sensitivity, that does not look like a construction driveway, but just to minimize mud on the road in the most minimal fashion. And then also maintenance of the fencing to eliminate any invasive species.
I love that Alex said that it's done manually because it's there, it's over by the pond and we're really working on trying to keep the water clean. So it's nice to know that it's not going to be mainly done with herbicides.
The gravel entryway to the gates, is that something that's acceptable to you? Is that going to be an unbearable cost?
I'm not gonna, again, say that that's a non-starter. I prefer to do it on a as needed basis, you know, and say if, you know, if you call us and say, we'd like, you know,
Right.
there's an issue here, let's.
Yeah, I don't want to pound you with a whole bunch of extra costs on it.
I appreciate
Some
that.
laurel in there or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we can, the resolution as I propose will eliminate that one additional
Right.
condition as I write it up. Just so we raised it at the hearing, that if there's an issue, you were willing to revisit it with the village if it becomes an issue with us.
Absolutely.
Right,
I think,
okay.
that piece on Gibson.
Yeah.
Where you have the gate.
Yeah.
That's far back enough for the drainage to take natural course. And whatever, after a good rain, whatever mud seems to lay there is laying inside the gate. It doesn't seem to be any farm tracks coming out onto the road. It's well done, and yeah, and I think that's something like that. It looks like that's probably what's going to happen with this one, this proposal.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. I mean, and in that case, where we have one of our gates there, the gate that we use more often, we have two gates on Gibson there. One of the two west spots in that field is sort of in front of, it's on the field side of the gate, but it's right there.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not.
It's inside, it's not
an
affecting,
issue, yeah.
it's not affecting the verge
Right.
or the roads.
Now, it does stay clean, because Bill and I walk it or ride it or whatever every day, so
Yeah.
it stays clean, Gibson.
Okay.
So are we prepared to accept the printed resolution we have with the additions that our fine attorney has suggested? I'll make the motion to accept it as it's printed with the additions. With a second,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have a bunch of minutes which everybody can review and maybe transmit any suggestions, changes to Rhodey, and we'll approve them next week. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 minutes. Correspondence from Southampton Town Police. I don't know.
I can
You
sum
want-
it up in a couple minutes.
Okay. Great.
Everything is about as it has been throughout the months. Well, it's less, of course, traffic wise and traffic stops. There was a death on Foxy Bog Lane on November 15th. And Gibson Lane, there was a suspicious person. The traffic stops are down a little bit. Now, there were 4 larcenies, which I don't remember ever seeing a larceny, but I guess there must have been because there were 2. There's a total of 6, and now this month was 4. There were 3 arrests, adult arrests after a traffic stop, for whatever reason, I don't know. And that's about it. 98 traffic stops as opposed to 110 in October, 98 for November, 115 September, August 120. The biggest month was July, 188. Any questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see, we had a letter from the Bridgehampton Fire District asking to be notified when we put in a speed bump, just so they're aware of it.
I thought we notified them.
Yeah, who
No,
knows? I don't know.
not. I
Maybe
did
they
not.
didn't pay attention.
I can notify.
Were we going to?
Oh, we will in the future. I mean,
Slips through the
they're not a
cracks. I
problem.
wasn't aware
It
of
doesn't
it.
restrict the fire truck from going over
You
it.
did not instruct me to do it.
Yeah. It just requires that they have to go the speed limit when they go over it. Peter Matheson Center, is there someone to speak to that? Anybody out there, Rhodey?
I don't think so. Let me just double check.
I don't see
We
it.
have Mr. Crane on left on the Zoom. And
I don't see that.
Okay, we'll skip on. If they show up, we'll go back to them. Peconic Bay Regional Community Housing Fund. We had a vote on, 0.5% tax on transfers over a certain size. Anyway, the village, there's really not much for us to do right now. We don't have any real estate to develop in low-income housing or workforce housing, but we can jump in at any point that we do get something we want to develop in that fashion. We're not precluded from it in future dates. You want to have some property you want to have developed as low-income or workforce housing.
It said we would not be exempt from it at any.
We always have to pay into it.
Yeah,
But if we want to get funds out of it, we're not precluded. If we don't want money from them right now for something, we have nothing to develop. in
yeah,
that
that's right,
fashion.
right.
Yeah, but at some later date, we could buy it,
But we still pay.
Yep,
each individual
absolutely.
property, it's
Yeah.
assessed to each individual property. Well, on the sale.
And now we have Kim Bishop.
Well, good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for considering our request. I think you all received an email that outlined our request. The only change since we sent the email, my mother passed away on the 28th of November. Our original thought was that she was 98, so she had a wonderful, full life. And but our original thought was that we would like to find some way of connecting her in perpetuity with Sagaponack, which was a community that she loved. And our thought was a bench at Gibson's Beach. That's the beach that she went to as a child, excuse me, with her sisters. That's the beach that she took my siblings and I to when we were kids. And we just thought, our original thought was this was going to be your Christmas present, but now we would like to see some way of, as I say, connecting her memory with the village of Sagaponack. And what occurred to us was the bench. If the bench is not something that fits within your scheme, maybe a tree, maybe not a bench at Gibson's, maybe something at Sag Store. If there's a public piece of property near Sag Store as opposed to who owns the store. Maybe, I know it's a different jurisdiction, but maybe something in the school. My grandmother first came to Sagaponack, I think in 1918, to teach in that schoolhouse. And then my mother and her two siblings went to that schoolhouse. So I'm sort of, our idea was the bench, but if that, as I say, is something that doesn't fit within what the village hopes to do with the beachfront, we would be open to other suggestions. I hope you would be as well. So.
Well, you open up a lot of possibilities. And I guess sometimes the concern with beachfront is that it gets buried or weathered or something. And maybe I'm happy with any location that somebody can agree on putting it. So
Our thought with the beach is the beach that she lives closest to now, or lived closest to, is Little Plains Beach in Southampton, and there are 3 benches there. And so that was our thought, that we would do one
right.
in Gibson's. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I had an idea and it was just kind of flew by me. We had discussed in the 15 years I've been on the board, a bench was put at Gibson Beach by accident by the recreation department. It was supposed to go to Sagmain. It ended up being there for a while before they could uncement it and move it. In that process, that whole section of the dune, we had a lot of wind problems and erosion on the right and the left as you come up to that beach. But back this fall, we discussed things for Gibson Beach that would clean up the entry in relation to all the people that ride their bikes and stuff like that. And we had discussed a bike rack, didn't we, Meryl? Am I remembering this right? And I was thinking along the idea of the way you enter the beach now, there's like 3 different places to read the rules sign-wise. And I think if on the left, you had a nice spot where you could park your bike, sit down on the bench, take your shoes off, like a little amenity there. The other place I thought of the other night, because I've been working on the Christmas tree at the end of Gibson there. That's such a beautiful view down Sagmain in there. That would be a nice place.
By the cemetery.
Yeah, by the cemetery, but on the green part where the flag is
Yes, I know.
section
It
there.
used to be a baseball.
Yeah, and then
No, just across the street.
I know, I used to play there when I lived in Bill's family house. Another place I thought of view-wise, because for those of us that, spent so much of our childhood walking around and doing things, we have one nice bench on the Gibson Lane facing Sagmain, right?
Mhm.
Over that way. And then we could put 2 in that section, one, because frequently all summer long after that bench was put there, people would be sitting there, like Mrs. Seltzer, I would walk by and have a chat with her, and I think it could.
You mean at the north end of Gibson's?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, okay.
to
Well,
look
maybe-
across that field, which we were so successful, I'm not gonna come up with the right year, Rhodey will, in 08, it was our first
But let me.
preservation.
Let me make it easy for you. I mean, we are open to anything that you would consider to be both acceptable and an amenity that would improve Sagaponic. So the idea of a bench with an area where people would park their bikes and maybe be, able-
Enjoy what we've preserved,
Yeah.
we worked so hard
I
on.
mean, so you mean on the east side of Gibson's,
Yes.
right at the dune, something there, or at the end of the parking area?
At the end of the parking
Yeah,
area.
Something like that would be, we would welcome that. Obviously, our family would pay for the bench and pay for the plaque that we would like to put on the bench, which would be very simple, just be, in memory of Catherine Roselle Bishop,
Well, in your experience of your job over the years, Tony used to say all the time that benches that if we accepted something, Rhodey, there had to be a certain type of bench for safety
Yes,
and,
of course.
well,
Whatever you would specify.
our lawyer had said that.
You don't want me making aesthetic decisions, let me put it that way. But so whatever you would specify, we would be happy to comply with. So I don't know, should we just leave it to you and you'll let us know what works?
Yeah, I'm amenable to any of them. I mean, I think the thing at the flagpole is cool too, the thing at the beach, I mean, yeah.
I just feel the 3 benches that you put in have had people sitting at them randomly all the time. And I think if we pick some other beautiful locations, that's been successful.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the one right by the beach, since the sand seems to collect there, if you put it on the pavement, it might get lost after a while. I mean,
Yeah,
The one
but
by
if we
the
did it on the
flagpole,
verge, it would, by the flagpole, it really would
it would be there forever. really.
forever and be
Yeah,
maintained.
I think the flagpole would be fine. I mean, we thought of Gibson's because, you know, that was the issue. But we always thought of the flagpole area, as sort of the village green of Sagaponic, and
Right.
so that would be fine.
And I think people, Mrs. Seltzer has
Yeah,
taught
I
me a
think
good
that-
lesson that people stop and sit on them when they go for their walks and,
Okay.
you know, on the way to the beach or on the way to Sag Store someday, hopefully will be open soon again and that type of thing.
So it's simply a matter of figuring out a bench that's appropriate.
It should, if we already have a design of an example, we should just match, we don't have, there's.
No, we
don't have
didn't.
any,
Oh,
so, but
But-
I have plenty of magazines.
yeah, resources, yeah, municipal resources on,
So
There's a quality, municipal quality. Tony was worried about, a cheaper bench disintegrating quickly, so there was a
the
quality.
bishops wouldn't do that.
no, we would be one of my brother, which would have to be substantial.
No, I mean, as long as the board is agreeable to the installation of the bench, which is the first hurdle. And then it would be, I would work with Tim to find the appropriate bench, make sure that you're all on board with it. And then we go forward.
Yeah, accept the donation, yeah.
Okay, so you and I will communicate.
We will.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, same with all.
Our condolences.
We're so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I think the village green's gonna look real spiffy
yeah.
once everything gets fixed up.
Absolutely. No, that's a great spot. I'm glad he mentioned it. Yeah.
Well, there's a nice garden there as it triangles that Bivens had put in years ago. And it's right by where we'll have the new Christmas tree once we take the old one down and plant the new one. That's in the spring or whatever time of year you do it. I just think that whole area could be made very, friendly.
Sure.
I think that's a great idea.
Cool. Let's move on. Village employee salary benefit amendments, that'll come up next week. Seasonal parking. Bill and Rhoda met with the highway superintendent. I guess they had a good meeting. And then I think Rhoda did research afterwards about legal requirements for spacing of signs.
Oh, no, we did that right at the meeting.
Oh, you
I
did?
meant to bring that book in. Do you want me to
Okay.
grab the book?
No.
Okay.
And it was interesting. I mean, I always thought the signs were awful close together. And, there's an awful lot of signs out there. And it turns out that now that we dropped our speed limit to 25, our signs are legal at 2,500 feet apart. So a lot of those signs we don't need at all. We can just take them down.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, no, it really,
Wow,
They're visually overwhelming. There's so
Oh, yeah.
many of them.
there's so
yeah, I
many.
mean, it's just bing, 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 bing. I went out and measured, because Rhodey pointed that out to me. And on Sag Main Street, the first measurement was 250 feet between signs. And then they varied all the way down to 190 feet. And when you say you could take out all this stuff,
Did you measure on Daniel's by chance?
no,
Oh,
no.
Did you say, how many feet can you get on?
2,500. That means there will be no signs in Little Sagaponic.
Half a mile apart, basically.
Yeah. I mean, you have some key roads that
Need it.
probably because of their closeness to the beach, but how Erica's Lane needs all those
Right.
signs that say no parking makes no sense to me.
And Daniel's.
And most of the Daniels, I'd say, yeah.
Eric is only a little over half a mile long. You could have a sign at the beginning, the end, and one in the middle,
Yeah.
and everything else can go.
I also think sometimes as, people are working hard to do their jobs, going up and down, there are moments where they turn up in odd combination. Like this year, I have 2 on my front lawn, and they're really close, and I don't know why, but other years I had none,
Right.
so I don't.
And I was gonna suggest that, I'll go with somebody. I don't know if you have time, Lisa or Bill or Carrie, or Anybody who wants to go out and maybe tag all the signs we think should go,
Yeah.
just permanently go, then see what's left. And I believe the superintendent said he would take down and put up some of them. So if there are key places we'd like them down, maybe then we.
Like over where we
We did say
preserve
some,
something,
Bill.
Yeah,
make it prettier.
The
What?
conversation that we had
okay. you
was
correct me.
that we would consider, the board would consider removing some of the seasonal signs on Erica's Lane, on Fairfield Pond Lane. So that was the gist of the conversation, not the distance. That was not in the conversation. So,
But I think we'd like to see a lot of them go if they're not necessary.
Yes.
Yeah, we would.
We don't
And
need
he's-
as many.
He was very cordial and very willing to do whatever we decided as a board to do. He was not,
however, he's not willing to go out and remove the seasonal rental signs as they stand right now and put them back in the spring. He wasn't, he told us that.
There's like 100 of them or more.
There's too many of them.
Yeah,
But now there's not gonna be as many.
right.
But I just want to be clear that what you're talking about now was not the conversation that we had.
Okay,
The conversation that we had was the board would consider removing the seasonal seasonal parking regulations on Erica's Lane, in that area there, on Fairfield, which would remove a ton of these signs.
right.
And so he said that he would then, if that's the case, be willing to remove the signs on a seasonal basis by the beaches on Gibson Lane and down on Sagamore.
Well, that's great.
So that's nice
Anything
compromise.
Removed now
Definitely.
off of Daniels.
We did not, we didn't go into details, but Bill,
he wasn't sure which ones we wanted out.
right.
Well, it's
As
like
long as
every
we
other
have-
one and stagger one, you don't need two, one on each side
Yeah,
of the road.
they're like soldiers. They need to be
One-
staggered.
And yeah, if one is going west, you don't need the east one, so, but then the next east one, you don't need the west one, you know?
It's
Well,
a visual.
If you're going west or east, that's why they put them on each side of the road. But
Yeah, but
yes,
they don't
you
need to
can-
be that close.
You can stagger them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But if they get installed, and Mr. Wilson pointed that out to us in the meeting, that distance placement, because we did ask him legally where a sign had to be placed in order for it to be enforceable.
We're talking about the speed limit signs
25.
That's correct.
in a different situation.
Distance
correct.
between the first two
That's
signs
correct.
and the
Speed limit signs,
1100.
we can go ahead and just repost.
As per that,
According
right.
right.
This distance is for speed limit only.
I'm sure if we find issues, we can put another sign up.
Oh, that's not
Signs,
important.
signs, Back
No.
up.
Sure.
Basically, linear speed limit signs in New York State.
Oh.
Speed limits, not general.
Oh.
Not the park.
Oh, we were
So
all
I
saying,
don't know whether
I thought that was a parking sign.
No, that's the speed.
No, that's a speed.
So if
limit.
we
Oh.
ever get back in the business of that Monday night drumming where we had 5,000 people parked, or I'm making the number up.
It's
but
back
it-
again.
Yeah, it's back, but it's not back at the bank.
That's right.
Then we can revisit the problem because they were parking from Sag Main all the way past Sag Store on Gibson and Sag Main and all the side roads.
Yeah.
And the police were beside themselves
Oh,
handling it. But that was, it started 14, 15 years ago. It's calmed down so far.
oh, COVID. So we don't know how close the parking signs have to
See
be?
if I can pinpoint it here.
Yeah, oh, I misheard. I
Yeah,
don't
you and me
understand.
both, Bill. I
Actually,
was actually doing the same
I
thing.
think we have to revisit where we want to park.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
And start all over. Because
Uh-huh.
those parking signs, particularly on the ones on Daniels Lane, were placed there by the town before we were a village.
Right,
So that's a code that they put down there. And I think a lot of them can come out,
no, I think
especially
so.
like on Erica's
Right,
Lane.
So if the board wants to amend the V&T to remove some of those seasonal rental signs, the discussion we had was. the-
Seasonal what signs?
I keep on saying rentals.
Parking.
The parking, then Mr. Regardo would be willing to take the signs, and Mr. Wilson was there too, who's the foreman, would be willing to remove the seasonal signs around the beaches.
Good.
Perfect.
So it's up to the board on whether or not you want to pull back that seasonal parking on Erica's and.
I like Bill's idea that maybe, well, Bill Barber, the other Bill, the road is your thing. You two guys could go, we can all shoot you an email in advance of ones that we think are visually annoying and we'll go from there, you know?
We could sit there, we have,
You don't want to remove the seasonal parking on Fairfield and Erica's.
Oh, no, I think
I think we
that sounds
should, but how do
good.
we do that? Do we,
Very
Yes.
easy. I'll give you a resolution next
we
week.
rescind the,
Yeah.
no parking
We
violations?
need those two roads.
So we'll do this in steps. We'll do a resolution next week to get those two.
Yeah,
And then we'll
And
look
then we'll
around
go
and
from
see
there.
what else we can
yeah.
get rid of. Okay, sounds good. to
Now,
me.
the other big road, which was was Daniels Lane. And as you know, the reason why the signs are there is because people that go to the beach didn't want to have the parking stickers or whatever, or get them, or there wasn't space, and they would park in the community, and that's why those signs were put up there. So the other big road is Daniels Lane, and whether or not you want to remove them there or reduce it so it's just on the either side of Peters Pond Lane. Because that's the possibility that they may.
That would be where they
migrate onto Daniels
flow
Lane.
out.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Well, how many cars would be doing that in the past? I mean, I don't have
Take
a
the size
problem
down and
with
find out.
cars here and there,
well, then the other piece would be is to take them all out, see what happens in the season.
especially
It
since
takes you-
they can't park down
It
on
will take
town
you a
line,
month to put them back
you know?
in. So,
You're gonna probably have to have the beginning of Daniels Lane
I was thinking that too.
because of the horse farm and
Right.
you can't have, and I have a visual picture of Tinker 10 years ago sitting in the audience like, they can't park all over, you know, the entrances to the horse farm and such.
Right.
So you might have to have it come partway up Daniels, but we can figure it out.
Right.
or
Have it
Gibson.
come up to
Yeah.
Fairfield. You guys can look at all the signs.
And probably you can have less signs as you're coming to Fairfield, because there's a ton of them. You could do every other one or something like that, but you're gonna have to protect the farms and the entrances to the deer fences, because you know, people park, they go, oh, I'll park there.
Right, right.
The farmers need protection.
So for next week,
What
we'll
am I
have a
doing?
resolution for those two roads.
Fairfield, Daniels, I'm sorry, Fairfield, Erica's,
That's just,
Holden is in there. What's the other road?
good.
You have 3 roads in that little area.
The other one. But all the roads in the Erica's lane subdivision.
Right.
There's another one, I can't think of it.
Yeah, the chance
Jared, oh, that's
No,
Parsons.
that's.
of someone going that deep into those roads
And
Yeah,
and
we
Fairfield
think they
Pond.
would. That's gonna be a long walk.
You don't want to do, right now, you don't want to do anything with Daniels, or you want to trim Daniels back? What do you
Well,
want to do?
yeah, I think we have to figure it out.
Do
I
these-
think we have to revisit, we could do X amount of feet east and west of, on Daniels, east and west of Peters Pond.
Yes.
And after that, we can do away with them,
Yeah,
if we can decide how
Okay.
far
how
down.
far we have to go.
Figure out,
Yeah.
right,
all
the
right.
distance.
Well, why don't we get a resolution for those 3 roads, and then, I don't know, Bill and I want to go out and,
Yeah, we can go
Try to
down
figure out.
and measure it out,
yeah.
see.
And you
I
can,
would
you
say,
know, I'm
let
sorry.
them park on Daniels down by Town Line and by Peters Pond. I mean, how many cars are we gonna get?
I don't
Well,
Everybody's complaining about not being able to park down at the
The
beach.
only
think- Yeah,
reason,
but I don't really see that many cars parking down there to get to town line.
the only reason why you might want to do a little at a time though is, remember when Dan's paper used to advertise places you could go
Oh,
to park without buying a sticker?
Right,
So you might want to slowly
Yeah,
Right.
see what, I don't know, where
have a couple of.
you don't want to
signs.
become the day tripper beaches, Gibson
Right.
and Peters Pond and Town
Right.
Line.
Well, the north side of Daniels, where there's a farm field, if you allow parking there, the farmer will never get in his
No,
field.
they'll never get in there.
Because I remember Jeff, originally, we changed parking on Bridge Lane, because Jeff White, when he was growing beans down there, couldn't get in his field.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They can't get in.
Right.
It's terrible.
Now with the deer fence, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
They
Or
put
they-
up that fence and,
Or they get in, they do their work for X amount of hours,
And they
and they
can't
can't
get
get
Can't get
out,
out,
and
yeah.
people are parked on the beach down the road.
Oh, nowhere to be found.
Well, there was a few farmers that had a very smelly yellow spray that they would take care of on
remember
a
that.
Saturday morning.
Yeah,
Or Sunday.
that was a very creative.
It kind of discouraged people from blocking their lots.
So you'll give me the distance.
One's going down.
yes, yes. John Crane, did you want to say something before we get into the next financials and stuff, or you just want to watch?
Bill, there is one of.
I was curious if there was,
Just for 1 second, I'm sorry. There is that sign also that you want to propose
Oh,
down on Town Line. If you want that as well, that would be part of the code. And that, once it's in the code, then Charlie said he would install it. So there is in your packet, under the discussion items, all of you have it, is a sample of a sign that says narrow road, 15 miles per hour.
To go where?
At the intersection of Daniels on Town Line, for Town Line.
yeah, this was actually,
Going
I've been looking around for some way to, we can't really drop the speed limit on the south end of Town Line Road, but we can put up a cautionary sign. I saw this in another town, narrow lane and 15 miles an hour. It has no legal significance, but it bullies people. And this is something we can get done, so.
Have that on my-
Actually, it's good you can see it.
Actually, Bill, if you put this in the code and you define, and I think they can go down to 15, right?
You can in special areas.
Yeah,
Well, the
so you-
school is 15.
Well, that's because it's a
That's
school district.
Yeah,
Yeah,
school.
well, that's
This
a
is-
special thing.
Right, but
Yeah.
some of them you can, and but I believe we can, if you define it as being the northern
Southern.
boundary at the intersection of Daniels Lane south to the terminus. Anyway, in order for this to be enforceable and for Charlie to put the sign
Right.
up, you would have to.
I think we
add
should make it
into the code.
enforceable.
Well, that's what Brian, that's what I believe we
Oh,
can.
okay. I always thought this stuff was, you couldn't get a ticket if the sign was yellow.
Yeah, so the warning sign is the narrow road, that's called the warning sign, that's a speed limit sign below it. That could be white too, but usually they can indicate it white just, yellow just because it's a warning. But it is enforceable, you could definitely.
Make the
police can
15
enforce it.
white and the other yellow and have.
Hey,
Well,
great.
this goes, yeah, I mean, it's two different signs on one pole. is
Yeah,
what it
right.
is.
Which I like.
Yeah. So, anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, Bill, but I think we
Okay,
should
no,
get
that's
that.
good. Actually, you know, John is there and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. So the floor is yours again.
a point of clarification on that lower speed limit of the warning sign on Town Line Road, south of Daniels Lane. Did I hear you say that we could not change the speed limit on that stretch
No, we can't.
below 30 miles per hour?
Oh, yes, we can, John.
We can.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I thought maybe there was going to be, once again, that this mismatch between what we want for Sagaponic and East Hampton having a different speed limit going north away from the beach,
Well, you're right.
which is, well, they can have whatever speed limit they want, I guess,
Yeah,
but
if they don't match it, you will end up with that, yes.
Yes, you're absolutely.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I think a warning sign's an excellent idea for that stretch. In the middle of the summer, it'll be very important. I was curious whether there was additional feedback on the speed bumps, particularly the ones on hedges. I think around the school, I suspect people all understand it's around the school and any extra measure we could take for safety around the school is good. But how about on Hedges Lane? Are we getting any useful feedback on that?
We received a letter from an animal rescue organization saying that their volunteer who works this area has seen a significant decrease in the number of injured animals since the speed. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Wow, excellent.
Yeah, which is kind of neat.
That's a benefit I never would have thought of.
I think there was something else, but I can't remember the
I
name.
got a call from
This is what we want.
taxpayer on Joe's Lane, is it? Jacob's Way, Jacobs.
Okay.
They're saying, thank you very much for putting a couple of speed bumps on. She said
Yeah,
she
the
was
feedback I've heard from,
intersection of Jacobs and Hedges. And by the time she pulled and looked both ways and nothing was coming, and then she went to pull out, cars are flying down. She hasn't happened to her since speed bumps. So she's in favor.
Good.
the feedback I've heard along Town Line Road is people are, I guess I would say in favor overall. Nobody likes to go over a speed bump, but they understand this is one more bit of progress on traffic safety, and they certainly appreciate it. Tradesmen, on the other hand, a couple have asked me, what's with all these speed bumps in Sagaponack? So I've explained to them why we have all these speed bumps in Sagaponack, and they should expect more going forward probably. And what I've noticed is that anybody with a trailer, like all the landscaping people, they're all now going 25 miles an hour, which is so mission accomplished on that.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for attending.
I got good feedback as well from people who have a house on Hedges Lane. They were thrilled. They were like, we got speed bumps.
Louis Mizell wrote a negative letter.
Yes.
Right, so I called him up and
On the traffic, on the stop signs or the bump? Or
on the bumps.
Okay.
And he didn't like the ones at the school or his road. He thought they were unnecessary, and I tried to explain to him, and you know, some people, he says you don't need them, I don't see a problem, blah, blah, blah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I asked him if he would like, I know in the summer, it can be hard to get out of a driveway or something.
On Hedges, it
He's on
is,
the end of Wilkes. And I said, well, what about a stop sign at the end of your street so you can get out easier? No, I don't. He doesn't have any grandkids, he doesn't walk, I don't know, but.
I had somebody send me that letter, and they seemed to agree. They were like, oh, got this letter, and I wrote back and I said he didn't like them at the school. I said, we've had really positive response from school teachers that, I said, people don't stop at the stop signs. I think people don't really know that. And because in his letter, it said, why would you have a speed bump so close to a stop sign when you're slowing down anyway? That's just the point. They don't slow down. And then I told and he said that they were placed in odd spots on Hedges Lane. And I said that was determined by our village engineer, and they do traffic studies. And the person who sent me the letter is actually, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And, it's like they seem to change their mind. It's not Lou, but they did. So I was like happy I wrote that email.
The understanding is at the mouth.
Yes, it is. People don't know.
Let's see, okay. We've got all this financial stuff, take a look at it. Claims and stuff, I guess we'll do vouchers next week. Board committee reports, Lisa, I went to the zoning board, last zoning board.
yeah, no, I could see you, I was on Zoom. But I never.
Far enough out so nobody knows.
No, I think at one point, I don't know, in the beginning, sometimes you can pick up who's
Oh,
there
really?
as
Okay.
they're fooling around, but I thought you were there and I do Zoom and turn my camera off because I'm not supposed
All
to,
right.
you know,
sure.
say anything particularly. I'm just making a report. I have a quick Christmas tree report to do.
Oh, good.
Oh,
I want to compliment so many people for helping with this project and so many miracles happening that it's most likely going to get done. My favorite elf is Rhodey. She got PSEG and electrician, and I forgot the name of the gentleman who put the conduit.
McGee.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Who was it?
Mike McGee.
Jim Hurley and Mike McGee.
Yeah, under the road. And
Charlie was-
what's amazing to me that every person that's worked there, I stop and talk to, and one of them I stopped right after you had stopped, Bill. And everybody's cheerful. They're working with the community. Lee talked to Mary Lee about how we were working on the idea, and we thought our step back might be if the lights on the tree had suffered over 2 years of not being used, too much damage, we'd do what was done 20 years ago. Between trees, there was a original tree and then the tree that's currently there. They put a small one in front of the big tree. And so we have a small cut tree now, as of yesterday, that was cut down the day before in front of the big tree. It's weighted with sandbags. It's a stand was made. They were supposed to bring the tree. I used my husband's guys at the store with the big van to bring it up to our shop in the barn. But they got all excited, and Owen Barber, Bill's nephew who grew up next door to Bill, got involved and helped in the building and the placing of it yesterday. And it was just wonderful that, you know, people who didn't originally come across our radar are working on it and doing a great job. The tree was cut off Mrs. Albright's property. It's farmed by Kathy Warren, and Kathy Warren called it, or for a lack of a better term, from Broadview Farms, is it called? Broadview, whatever. So all this is going on. Saturday, we hope to get the lights on it. Rhodey's got her ear to the ground to get the final hookup. The
What kind
conduit.
of lights? That's what I would like to know.
All right, Lee has the old, there are 2 strands. Oh, Jackson Dodds, the tree guy, just turned up one day and took them all down for Lee, out of the goodness of his heart.
They're not LEDs.
They're not LEDs,
Okay.
and they show
Hurt my
better
eyes.
than the LEDs.
Those
Two.
blue ones are.
The 2 of the original 10 strands on that tree that are still working should cover the little tree. So we're gonna use those, they're not LED, and hook into the box conduit.
Okay, great.
place.
Thank you.
Or an extension.
And if they don't work, even though they worked the other day, then we will get lights. It will happen. So everything has gone really well. It's been like amazing how many people are involved. And I thought it was so funny how Roger's workers on a quiet day were like, oh my gosh, we want to do this. This is fun.
Are they taking down the old big tree and using that one in place, or are you gonna leave both of
They're going to be both there for the Christmas season
them?
this year. In the spring, the tree committee has to make a decision. It's diseased. I mean, they would say
Yeah,
yes.
it definitely is.
It's,
Matt's gonna send in a proposal for.
and Jackson's gonna do a
Replacement.
proposal too, and then committee would
83, I
decide,
guess, right?
I mean, which vendor they
Yeah,
use.
yeah.
And the fact that the electrical part is now in place, we're good to go for next year. And Christian Topping and I went over the history from the Topping family and the Foster family as to the other trees that were there left in memory. And I thought, if the tree committee agreed to it, we would list, this is the third tree, and list the names over the years, farmers that it were in memory, the other trees from, that had to be
Where are we
taken.
listing that?
Well, you put a plaque next to
You
it.
do a plaque.
Well, that's your decision. not
Yeah,
the
no,
committee's
yeah, it could be
decision.
done, and I think that whole area can be spruced up. And while we're talking about sprucing up, I'm gonna call it the Village Green. Tom White has spoken to me about that the flagpole will probably need some repairs and possibly a new box. So I think that whole area can be revitalized, but still look the same, and it's all positive. And everybody said yes that I've talked to. It's been really good.
Great, thank
Be a
you.
nice
Lisa.
spot for
Excellent.
Mrs. Bishop's fence.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they singing this year?
We can't set a singing date without knowing the date we're getting power. So we probably won't have the singing part, but I think next year we could plan a party on a specific date. And Bill Barber has agreed to unplug it the beginning of January, and then I'll be gone for 2 weeks after Christmas. Then we can get the lights off the temporary one, and Roger's crew will take it to the dump or wherever it goes.
Thank you.
Zoning board, this past Friday, has been for the last couple of months working on height variances proposed by people who live down by the ocean. And there were 2 things on the agenda, 110 Sand Dune Court, and they were looking for 51.9 feet, which was discussed as a 3-story structure. But the zoning board asked us as a group, and I'm not saying today, but maybe to put on our agenda down the line, if we could revisit the definition, right, Brian, of what is a 2- and a 3-story structure in our code. And it would help them while they're getting all these height issues. So I thought maybe we could put it in January.
Yep, we're working on that.
Oh, good.
There's a
Okay.
draft being circulated amongst the building inspector, Rhodey.
All right.
What's the
So
rate?
that would be,
Oh, you're not on that?
I'm not doing that.
Oh, okay.
okay, so that's something they're
Very well.
looking for. And my zoning board award this month goes to Marilee Foster. She was awesome in her tenacity to get focus on the difference between the FEMA law and the Sag Village law. And I just want to give her an awesome award for that. So the 110 Sand Dune Court, the hearing is closed. We have 60 days as a village zoning board to answer, more to follow. 1 Potato Road. The decision was rendered, and there were 9 various variances needed, but the important variance that we've all kind of had our ears to the ground was the height variance. And if you look at the current house, it has a really strange roof. It's, no, it's on the ocean. It has a pointy roof that modernish comes up to a point. So over half, am I right, Brian, of the roof is in the correct 41 feet. But a small section of the roof would protrude, what, 5 inches? It was very tiny.
Through the pyramid, yeah.
Through the pyramid. So most of this building would fit on that. The other variances are similar variances that sometimes happen with our board normally. So anyway, what the decision was rendered and the board voted as follows: 3 yeses for it and 2 noes. So 2 of our members are not comfortable with that additional 5 inches and spoke to that point, but I'm not gonna kick them out or anything. I mean, that was their opinion. Architectural board at the end of November, which is happening again this coming Monday, still has enormous amount of driveway gates. 12 Sag Road, denied without prejudice. Gotta find out that guy. 629 Hedges Lane. It was interesting with that because it's a flag going in, and in the process, the building inspector discovered an illegal gate. While this person was getting approved on, that always kind of makes me smile. But anyway, the neighbor who didn't have a gate, there's 3 houses heading in on this flag, pointed out a very interesting problem, that if there's a gate on 2 of the 3 houses, that means everybody comes in his driveway, every UPS, every FedEx turns around, blocks his driveway, and makes it not possible for his family to get out. So this was adjourned for measurements, as well as I think hopefully the neighbors will work on this problem and it will come back at us. 427 Bridge Lane was approved. The applicant came back with reduced glass surface, and everyone was happy. 53 Hedges Lane, just to remind you, has come up several times. I'm going to give you Michael Johnson's old historic house next to Don's house. The problem that's kind of not getting this to move at this point is not necessarily with how the applicant is treating the historical house. It's with, they have more square footage on the property. The barn they're building in the back, the barn kind of doesn't go with the historic house, the board felt, and it kind of overshadows the historic house. So you would drive by, see this nice historic house and a rather large barn that, this is a Lisa opinion, was long and thin. It just didn't kind of go with it. So the applicant was asked to go back, and it was adjourned and refocus on the visual picture and hopefully redesign maybe the barn. We'll see what happens. 181 Parsonage Pond Road. That was adjourned also. It was felt that the garage that they would like to add has to work better with the look of the house. And that happens frequently on this board, where people put an addition on and it just doesn't match what's on the property. 542 Sag Main Street is Sag Store. It was approved.
What was approved?
Their building permit.
Okay.
And they are around the site now, coming in and out of the door. You see actual people coming out of the Sag Store door. So it sounds like they're getting ready to do some things. 64 Sand Dune Court was approved for a demolition. And I'm not familiar with the house, but they were kind enough in their discussion, because I was Zooming. I heard them say the house was built in 1965. So it does fit our demolition criteria. Then they presented the new house that they would like to put in place. They were asked to go back to work a little bit on the screening of the second floor windows, because they would emit so much light out. And they also were missing a landscape plan, so more to follow. Sorry that took so long.
No,
It was
that's
a
good.
longer agenda, which was nice to see.
Just a quick question on the Michael Johnson barn. Is this a storage barn or is this going to be an occupied?
It's going to be an occupied guest house. And there won't, the barn, I mean, Michael Johnson's old house will become an exercise studio. So it's a reverse of occupancy, I guess.
Wait, they're building a new
Principal
house?
structure.
A barn behind it, which is a new house, which is a guest house. They own the property behind it, and they want a guest house on this property.
So the house, the property behind it is where the main house is gonna, new main house.
No,
And then,
no, the property behind it, they've already Oh, several years.
House like that.
They also bought Michael
Is
Johnson.
there a house on it?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
They're building it right now.
they're building.
Okay.
So, basically, they're gonna have to come back with that barn structure slash guest house.
What's it look like, Parish Art Museum?
Yeah, it's long and thin. It just doesn't look like Sagaponic. Barns didn't look that way around here.
Wow. Okay.
Anything else to be reported at this time? Have a motion, I'll make
I
the
just wanted to
motion.
make a mention, I'm sure everybody knows because you've all read the papers, but we do have a new chief of police at
Oh, yeah.
the town. And I did send a little email out to him to congratulate him.
What's his
So,
name?
James Kiernan.
Oh, yeah, Karen.
Oh, Karen.
Who was acting chief.
Yeah.
James, I mean, Steve.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Hi. Okay, here's my